Hello all, and I'd like to thank Polly like you all have. That was fantastic. I don't know if Richard Dennis has said this today. I've missed a couple of the sessions, but he normally says power corrupts and PowerPoints corrupt absolutely. Well, I'm about to corrupt you. So I just need to get my, what do I do here? Where is it?
Click the button.
I did. Well, I'm not going to corrupt you by the look of it.
We can click it up there as well.
Okay. Well, I just need something to be clicked. Okay. So before we begin, the title's wrong. You'll notice that it talks about the carbon myth industry is what it should be saying, which for my context is CMI for short, which does share a similarity to another organisation that you may be familiar with. And so I'm pretty keen to, and you're probably a bit stonkered today, to be honest with you. So I've got some slides to actually show you what we do and where we are, which will make me less boring, hopefully. But it's also to give you a context of what we're trying to achieve. And before I begin, there's the common expression, fear of missing out, the FOMO. We had this, and that was one of the reasons we set out to do what we did on the farm. And we've now got, as I've been told, ROMO, which is relief of missing out. So if you remember nothing from today, you'll remember that. If we can go, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Does it work now?
Try that.
Okay. No. Am I aiming somewhere? At the screen. There we go. Okay, so there's a gentleman here, Andrew Campbell, actually, who will appreciate this more than anyone, because he's from this country. This is a shot in the 1960s of a property called Helmview. And for any of those, it's actually a slide, so it's a bit shabby, but it's actually a pretty handy slide in terms of seeing what the landscape was like. And you can see through the middle, for those who've got a keen eye, there's a creek area which is dried out, and all that discoloration is the salt area. And then you've got this great historical relic of when we were paid to bring back our red gum trees. So we're in southwest Victoria, looking towards the Grampians, for people who are familiar with our area. Now I'm doing the right thing. This is exactly the same spot, and this is in the 1990s, and this is post-Potter Foundation days, but with a little bit of work from us at this stage on broadening these plantations. So just to give you a really strict context, we're about 8,500 acres, and this property is just over 1,300 acres of it. And we run a high input, high output system of livestock. So we've about 18,000 ewes and 800 cattle, and certain times a year it's double that, obviously, because they've got lambs and calves, or a bit more than double. And this was a model which was really significant for us. We became carbon neutral. It wasn't our intent. We were focusing on biodiversity, we were focusing on productivity, we were focusing on riparian correction, salination, land slips, a whole bunch of other things going on. But just to give you a context of, it'll all make sense in a minute, where we've got, let's done it again. That's the same spot, and you can see it's just getting more mature and the trees are growing. We've introduced agroforestry at size into this block now, which has doubled the tree cover that was there. And that's an important part, because if you actually understand the carbon story, it's what we use to claim carbon neutrality later on. And that's actually last week in the same spot. And the dry isn't because of any disaster, it's called autumn. And so my son took that with a drone. And that's showing the maturity of where we've got to. I'm conscious of, there's some people in the room, and I have seen a couple have ag background. A couple have made themselves known to me, but I don't want to inundate you with a whole bunch of farmer talk. But you have to get a bit of context on what's going on here. In these farms, to get to the carbon neutrality, we planted 19% down to permanent revegetation and or saw logs, agroforestry trees. And that was how we got to offset under measurement with the University of Melbourne in a large study they did in 2016, where it showed that we could run a high input, double the district stocking averages, have a lot of food and fibre leaving the place, but you could be carbon neutral because of the offsetting potential. In this context, insetting, and there's a big difference between offsets and insets. And for ag, it's a really big difference because we use it for our own product to go forward. And that allowed us to claim carbon neutrality. We've just completed the second study, and it hasn't gone to peer reviewing yet, but basically what it's showing is we're sitting on about 88% carbon neutrality. And the reason we've reached that point is because of the maturation of the trees. So if there's nothing else you also take home from today, it's carbon sequestration in the form of whatever you use to sequester, whether it's trees, soil carbon, or any other concept. It's transitional because it's not permanent. It's permanent over a length of time, and it's still there, and it gives you biodiversity benefits, it gives you co-benefits. There's a lot of good reasons to do it, as there is with soil carbon. Between our two studies, we reached saturation point in our soil carbons of 3.5 organic soil carbon at measurement in 2016, so we could not use that in the second study. And if you actually, we'll get to in a minute, some of the aggregators that are claiming these quite false figures on what they can achieve, it just shows you that it's quite limited what the landscape in Australia can do. This is just to give you a very simple view of the scale of some of our plantations and what we've done. The different colours is the difference. That's permanent revegetation, local species in there with a 20% buffer for species about an hour north of us to give a climate change buffer if all goes to shit. And that's a scientific term. And then above that's the agroforestry. That's quite young. And then you get to, this is very sticky. Then you get down to, this is different, same system but a different block. And you can see the agroforest is growing up. And if you came to our farm today, that's what you'd see, except it wouldn't be green. And you've got the maturing of trees and the grampians in the background. And we've got deep water storage. You've got, on the side of that, for people in their trees, there's spotted gums or maculata. And then you've got your permanent re-veg on the border. And that's a deep water storage dam, which interestingly enough means we reduced our water usage by over 60% because deep water stays cooler, so you don't have as much evaporation. So just to get to the nutshell of that, we felt pretty good. We'd got there. We were selling, and we are still selling product into sort of boutique industries. We've got Coles carbon neutral beef. We've got Coles now doing an experiment with our lamb. We've got a lot of our wool product goes into ZQ, a specialist animal welfare-based, responsible wool standard product to mainly North American sportswear markets. So there is a premium there to do it. And so we were going, well, this is a bit of a model. MLA used us. I went to the Egyptian COP where they held us up as this model. And you can see what's coming. Then we remeasured and we realised we're in a bit of trouble. That's just an aerial shot. That's actually a video, which is quite nice. I'm just trying to make it more pleasant for you. But it's not going to make it more pleasant. This is not dissimilar to most Australian ruminant-based agriculture. So remember, Australian agriculture is in broad numbers is about 17% of our footprint. Methane is our big baby. That's our big problem. And the renewables and some of those other things to lower our footprint are significant, but they are still tiny. The big one is these amazing creatures that take crap pasture and produce high density, high value product, whether that's fibre in the context of wool or in beef and lamb. This is also what shows you the key way of measuring this, and this is why it's quite important, is carbon intensity. So on your left-hand side, you'll see that gives you range of what you could expect in normal farm operations in southern Australia. Northern Australia is a lot higher. In southern Australian beef and lamb is a much lower density just because of the intensity and because we have much higher fecundatory levels. We have a lot more lambs and calves per maternal unit, therefore it's a lot more carbon efficient. That's where we are sitting. And that's where we were sitting, including sequestration going forward. So that's nearly current. So we're still pretty okay compared to others, but we're not okay in terms of the climate because we still have a footprint. The issue with this is, and this is where there's an overlay, the science-based SBTI targets initiative, which most food purchasers in the world have signed up to, has set that they're going to reach carbon neutrality, and it depends if you're Unilever or Coles or whoever it is, at some point in the future. And to be able to achieve that, what they've signed up to, I don't know if they realise this, is 90% of that carbon footprint has to be taken by the supply line. So they can't go buy offsets for 100% of it. They can up to 10% where they can't move it. And that is a real problem for Australian agriculture because we're going to have people screaming to buy our products with these targets going forward, but we won't be able to provide them because we can't sequester the amount of carbon that we need to. There's also an overlay on all of this. Australian agriculture at 17% is probably only going to grow in percentage as other industries quite rightly clean up their act. But we haven't got a lot of tools in our toolbox to clean up our act with. So then you've got these carbon... Hang on, I'm nearly finished this. This is a quick summary of what we do. We're actually 2016, they've discovered in the second study where we reached it. It's financial. We've planted about 1.3 million trees, so we've got a few trees out there to get to where we're doing. This is the one which is the critical one. So the permanent re-veg, which is your mixed species, probably the winners in biodiversity gains. We've gone from, as an indicator species, we've gone from 46 birds when we started to 174 birds now. What's happened? So you say, oh, that's really good. Well, it is really good, except what's happening here is that maturation's going on with those trees, which are slowing down the sequestration rates. Now, well, they're still there, and they're still providing biodiversity, and they're still providing a lot of good things, a lot of co-benefits. They're providing a lot of shelter for our livestock, which improves our lambing percentages. You've got a lot of good things going on, but from a pure carbon point of view, we're going to hit the wall. And that's the same for the rest of Australian agriculture. No matter what they do, if it's a transitional thing, putting aside some of the fraudulent claims of soil carbon, they still will hit the wall because there's a saturation point. The Guardian ran an article on us about 3 weeks ago after this study. I got 54 emails of anyone in the room who sent me one. I'm sorry, I haven't apologised. Of what these great solutions to the problem are, and most of them related to soil carbon, which we don't agree. So that's the end of the slides. So I'll leave that instead of looking at me. So what the issue we have is Australian Ag, and Rupertex has come out recently, and Polly sent me the report, first Polly, not second Polly, sent me the report, and in a nutshell, what they're saying is we're going to have 3 times the increase in ACCUs, or the Australian Government measurement tool for carbon, in the next 10 years than what we've got now. And most of these will be in the land sector, so where farmers are. And remember this overlay, farmers have to offset their own emissions. You've got a drying landscape. We haven't got enough capacity to offset our own emissions. And even if we did, and we all did what we've done, it would only be a transitional anyway. And we're then selling to other industries, oil or gas or whoever, coal, to offset their emissions when we need the emissions. So you can see there's a bit of a crunch coming here. So the Rupertex report's quite interesting. They said, just relax, guys, there's going to be enough ACUs to meet our safeguard mechanisms expectations in the next 10 years. So, I relax then. So Rich Eckhart, who's a bit of star in this space, professor at Melbourne Uni, he argues that the biggest landscape change we're going to have for Australian agriculture since colonisation is going to be this impact. So it is a really significant impact. We're not talking about Mickey Mouse stuff. So, is that 1 minute or I can't remember? 1 minute, okay. So the problem for ag is twofold. We've got this issue that we need to get our own footprint down without the tools. We need to have the ability to do whatever we can within landscape. We've also got these aggregators going around, or sharks as I call them. And what they're doing is they've got methodologies in their back pocket. They come onto farm, they sign up, they tick your clipper as it comes through up anywhere between 15 and 50% cost, sign off on the methodology. The responsibility for those land credits, the carbon credits, by and large rests with the land holder, the farmer, the owner of that land. If they're wrong in their methodology, which most are, and anyone who heard Andrew McIntosh's talk last year would know that. And soil carbon's even worse. There's the Microsoft sample where Wilmot Ag have sold to Microsoft carbon credits and got $1 million for them in 2021. And those carbon credits are out by by 7 to 1 falsified. Microsoft's taken them off their registry at least, but they got the $1 million. So this is the problem. You've got farmers dealing with trying to produce the most efficient food and fibre you can to get your footprint down at source. You've got a problem with these aggregators coming in trying to take the opportunities that they can from the farmers. You've got some farmers who just don't recognise the problem, and what we need to do is to move forward. So I'll finish up there other than to say that it's a problem for ag coming forward, and I think that you need to be conscious of that these outside agencies are going to put a lot of pressure on farmers because it's cash in hand. They'll let you sign up for 25 years. They'll say it's all fine and dandy, and then that farmer's going to turn around and have to sell product which they can't offset, and they might be in the perverse situation that they're entering into a market 25 years where that carbon credit which they've sold for $30 or $40 now is going to be $300 or $400. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. We love that we can make these videos free to watch, but they're not free to make. It's thanks to our generous supporters that we can keep making research and content that changes minds. So, if you like what we do, please consider giving to the Australia Institute so we can keep doing it. Visit our website australiainstitute.org.au and click the donate button to see how your support can help fund high quality research that matters.